Hello, my dear learners. Today I have come up with another topic, and that is active voice and passive voice. Yeah, that's correct. So, basically, voice is an important topic of advanced grammar, right? So far, you have been learning only the topics of basic grammar, right? But today I'm going to explain how you are going to convert active into passive voice. Okay, so let's first understand what is a sentence. So, sentence in simple terms, sentence is a group of words that makes complete sense in itself, right? And to make a sentence, you need a subject, a verb, and an object. Students, as you know that when we want to express our ideas, our opinions, our views, right? Or even our feelings, we need sentences, right? Without sentences, you cannot express your feelings, you cannot express your ideas, you cannot express your opinions on any topic. Here comes my first slide, and in this slide, we are going to discuss the definition of voice. What is a voice in English grammar? So, voice shows the form of a verb indicating whether the subject is doing the action or receiving the action. Yes, in simple terms, voice is the form a transitive verb takes to indicate whether the subject is the doer of an action or the subject is the receiver of an action, right? So you can also say that voice of the verb tells us whether the subject is performing an action or the subject of the sentence is receiving an action. I hope it is clear. Moving on to the next slide. Now, students, you can express your ideas in two different ways, right? Either in active voice or in passive voice. So, understand further. There are two types of voice in English grammar. First is active voice and second is passive voice. So, now we are going to discuss the difference between active and passive voice. Active voice first. So, when we want to say that the subject of the sentence is doing an action, understand again, when you want to say that the subject of a sentence is doing an action, then we use verb in its active form, right? But when we want to say that the subject of the sentence is receiving an action, then we use verb in its passive form. Are you getting? I hope you have understood. Now, in active voice, the focus is on the subject, right? The focus is on the doer. But in passive voice, the focus is on the receiver. Because in passive voice, the receiver is the subject. But in active voice, the subject is the doer. Passive. So I'm reading out the sentence of active voice. Shade blows the candles. In this sentence, shade is the object, shade is the subject, blows is the verb, and candles stand for the object of the sentence. But in second sentence, the candles are blown by shade. Okay, so I'm not going into detail to explain you the difference here right now because I'm going to explain the difference between active and passive further. Yes, subject of active voice becomes object of passive voice, and object of active voice becomes the subject of passive voice. Okay, and this is very significant. This point is very significant to understand the difference between active and passive voice. I hope you are getting. Now moving on to the next slide. Yes. Now active and passive voice. So when we want to say that the subject of a sentence is doing the action, we use the verb of that sentence in its active form. Yes, when you are making a statement, obviously you will always use verb in its active form, not in passive form. Okay, so I'm talking about active voice sentence. Okay, though you can use, definitely you can use passive sentences. A man is cutting down a tree. Here, man is the subject and the action that he is performing is cutting. Okay, and the object here is tree. So, cutting is the active form of verb. Okay, and you can also say that is the helping verb. Is the helping verb used here with cutting sense. It's a sentence of present continuous tense. I hope active voice is clear. Moving on to the next slide. Yes. Now I'm going to discuss the difference between active and passive voice. Though I have already explained what is a passive voice. First understand active. In active voice, this is the simplest definition I have come up with. I hope you will understand the concept. In active voice, the subject performs the action. Yes. In active voice, subject is the doer of an action. Okay. But in passive voice, the action is performed on the subject. The subject receives the action, right? In active voice, subject is the doer of an action, but in passive voice, subject is the receiver of an action. Fine? So this is the basic. It means in active voice, the focus is on the subject, but in passive voice, the focus is on the receiver. As receiver is the subject of the sentence in passive voice. Let's discuss the example first. John is kicking the ball. So this sentence is written in active voice. So John is kicking the ball. It means John here is the subject and John is performing an action. He is doer of an action and that action is kicking. And who is receiving the action performed by the subject? Definitely object of the sentence is going to receive the action performed by the subject, and here the object is ball. Okay, so ball is the object, kicking is the verb, and John is the subject. So this sentence is an example of active voice. Now move here and see this example. The ball is being kicked by John. Here the ball has become the subject and kicked or is being kicked is the passive form of verb used here. And John, obviously, John has taken the place of the object, though John is the one who is doing the action and he is performing the action here on the ball. So ball is the receiver, but here ball is placed in place of the subject. That's why we can say that ball is the subject of the sentence. I hope it is clear. Students, now I would like to explain the difference between active form of verb and passive form of verb, right? Now further, now John is kicking the ball. So remember one thing keep one thing in mind, and that is in active voice we use verb in its active form, but in passive voice we use verb in its passive form. So here John is kicking. Is kicking is the active form of verb. Is the helping verb, and kicking is the main verb plus ing form. It means kicking is the ing form of main verb. You can say that. But in passive voice, here you can see is being kicked. Is being kicked is the passive form of verb. Now the question arises, how a passive form of verb is formed, right? So a passive form of verb is formed by joining to be plus past participle form of verb. So to be is being kicked. So kicked is the past participle form of verb, and is the to be form of verb, and being, we are adding being because the sentence is of active voice is in present continuous tense, and because of the tense of the active voice we are adding being here, right? So the passive form of verb here is being killed. I hope it is clear. So you have to keep all these points in mind when you are converting a sentence from active to passive. Now moving on to the next slide. Yeah, I have already discussed this slide, so no point of wasting our time on this slide. So now some important alterations that you need to make when you are converting a sentence from active to passive. So let's discuss. Students, I'm not going to discuss these rules today. Definitely in my next video, I'm going to take up all these rules. So for the time being, bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching.